Hello, and welcome to Stories for Sleep Tonight. Our journey takes us to the heart of London, to a district that has, for centuries, been the centre of the city's diamond and jewellery trade. It is a place of quiet tradition and immense hidden wealth. We are going to Hatton Garden, a small network of streets where fortunes are traded behind unassuming facades, and where, deep in the basements of old buildings, lie vaults designed to protect those fortunes from the outside world. Our story is set during the long, quiet lull of the Easter holiday weekend of 2015. It is a story about the breach of one of these subterranean fortresses. But the culprits were not a team of slick, high-tech criminals. They were a small group of elderly men, career criminals from a bygone era, who decided to undertake one last, audacious job. This is a quiet, strange, and almost comical tale of analog methods in a digital age. A story of patience, persistence, and a very heavy drill. So, I invite you now to find a comfortable position, settle in, and let the quiet sounds of a sleeping city be your guide. There is no need to follow every detail of the plan. Simply allow the slow, methodical recounting of this unusual crime to lead you gently toward a state of rest. Imagine London over a long bank holiday weekend. A deep, pleasant quiet has settled over the city. The usual frantic energy of the financial and commercial districts has subsided, the streets given over to a handful of tourists and the quiet hum of a city at rest. In the jewellery district of Hatton Garden, the workshops are dark and the storefronts are shuttered. It is a time of profound, peaceful stillness. But beneath the surface of this quiet, a plan is in motion. Our story takes us to the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit building, an unremarkable structure that houses a deep, subterranean vault. It is here that a small group of men, most of them in their 60s and 70s, begin their work. Their entry into the building is not a dramatic smashing of doors. It is quiet and technical. They make their way to an elevator, disable it, and use the empty shaft to descend into the basement, unseen and unheard. They are now in the quiet, still, subterranean world beneath the sleeping city. Their first task is to bypass the security systems. The alarms, the sensors, the gates all are dealt with the quiet confidence of men who have been doing this their entire lives. With the electronic guardian silenced, they are faced with their primary obstacle. It is not a laser grid or a pressure plate, but something far more brutish and simple. A 2-foot thick wall of reinforced concrete. They have come prepared. They begin the slow, laborious process of setting up their main piece of equipment, a heavy-duty, industrial-grade core drill, the kind of tool used for major construction, not for a quiet bit of burglary. And then, the work begins. Imagine the sound, a low, grinding, rhythmic groan, as the powerful, diamond-tipped drill bit begins its slow, relentless work against the solid concrete. It is not a fast process. It is a test of patience and endurance. For hours, in the dusty darkness of the basement, the men take turns operating the heavy drill, slowly, painstakingly, boring a hole into the vault wall. The air becomes thick with a fine, grey dust, the scent of pulverized stone and hot metal. The work continues through the night, a slow, methodical, and exhausting process. They drill one hole, then another, and then a third, creating a small, overlapping opening. Finally, after hours of this grinding, monotonous work, they break through. There is no triumphant shout, only the quiet satisfaction of a long and difficult task completed. The smallest member of the crew is chosen to slip through the narrow, jagged hole they have created. He is now inside the vault. Inside the dusty, quiet dark of the vault, the next phase of the work could begin. The city outside remained oblivious, enjoying the long, peaceful weekend. But beneath its streets, one of the most audacious heists in British history was slowly and methodically unfolding. When the long Easter holiday weekend finally drew to a close, and the city of London began to stir back to life, the staff of the Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company returned to work, expecting another ordinary Tuesday morning. The building was quiet, the front doors were secure, and there was no outward sign of any disturbance. But when they descended into the basement, they were met with a scene of quiet, industrial chaos. The main vault door stood closed and secure, but the air was thick with concrete dust, and the floor was covered in debris. And there, in the wall beside the vault, was a massive, jagged hole. A man-sized opening bored directly through 2 feet of reinforced concrete. The police were called, and the investigation fell to the flying squad, the elite branch of Scotland Yard that handles major armed robberies. The detectives who arrived on the scene were faced with a puzzle that felt like it belonged to a different era. This was not a slick, modern, digital age heist. It was a brute force, analog crime, a testament to sheer, grinding persistence. Inside the vault, the scene was one of methodical plunder. 73 safe deposit boxes had been prized open, their contents emptied. The floor was littered with discarded tools, heavy crowbars, and the detritus of the gang's long and laborious work. The scale of the theft was immense, with an initial estimate of £200 million in stolen jewels, gold, and cash, making it the largest burglary in English history. As news of the crime broke, it became an immediate and sensational story, not just for the value of the goods stolen, but for the old-fashioned, almost nostalgic, nature of the break-in. The press, captivated by the audacity and the low-tech methods of the unseen perpetrators, quickly gave them a collection of memorable nicknames. They were called the Diamond Wheezers, or, most famously, the Bad Grandpas. Scotland Yard now found itself at the beginning of a massive and very public investigation. They were faced with a bizarre and contradictory crime. The planning and execution suggested a team of highly experienced professional criminals, yet the sheer brute force method seemed almost archaic. They had a crime of immense scale, but very few initial leads. The investigators began the slow, painstaking work of collecting forensic evidence from the dusty scene, and started to review the thousands of hours of CCTV footage from the surrounding streets. They were on the hunt for a crew of audacious, old-fashioned criminals, a group the world would soon come to know as the Bad Grandpas. The quiet and methodical search for a team of thieves who seemed to have stepped right out of the pages of history had begun. For a crime of this scale, the initial trail was remarkably cold. The gang had been disciplined and had left no obvious clues at the scene. But the city of London in 2015 was a very different place from the London of the great heists of the 1960s. It was a city of a million electronic eyes, a place where nearly every street corner was quietly observed by a CCTV camera. And it was here, in the silent digital records of these cameras, that the first thread of the investigation would be pulled. Detectives from the flying squad began the laborious but essential process of reviewing thousands of hours of footage from the Hatton Garden area, recorded over the long Easter weekend. After days of patient viewing, they found what they were looking for. An unremarkable small white van was seen arriving in the district on the first night of the heist. It was seen again, leaving and returning over the next 2 days, its movements consistent with the timeline of the robbery. This was the first crucial lead. The police traced the van's license plate to its registered owner, an elderly man named John Kenny Collins. With their first name, the police placed Collins under quiet, covert surveillance. They watched as he went about his daily routine, a routine that included regular meetings with a number of other men, all of a similar advanced age, in various pubs and cafes in North London. The surveillance teams watched them from a distance, using long-range cameras to record their conversations through the windows of the establishments. The men, seemingly oblivious and overconfident, spoke freely. To decipher these silent conversations, the police brought in an expert lip reader, and it was here that the case broke wide open. The lip reader's transcripts revealed that the elderly men were not discussing pensions or grandchildren. They were openly, and sometimes boastfully, discussing the intricate details of the Hatton Garden heist. They spoke of the difficulty of drilling the hole, of melting down gold, and of how to divide their share of the immense, stolen fortune. This surveillance, combined with the tracking of their vehicles and associates, allowed the police to methodically piece together the identities of the entire crew. The ringleader was identified as Brian Reeder, a 76-year-old career criminal. Other key members included Terry Perkins, aged 67, and Danny Jones, aged 60. They were all veteran thieves, ghosts from the golden age of British crime. The Bad Grandpas had executed a crime worthy of a classic film, but they had forgotten they were living in the 21st century. Their quiet, boastful conversations in London pubs, captured on camera and carefully deciphered by an expert, had become their undoing. The trap was now set, and all that was left for the flying squad to do was to close the net. With the identities of all the key players confirmed, the flying squad made their final preparations. The quiet period of watching and listening was over. It was time to bring the story of the Bad Grandpas to its conclusion. In a series of coordinated raids, police moved in to arrest the elderly criminals, the heavily armed officers of Scotland Yard, expecting to confront hardened gangsters, were instead met with men in their 60s and 70s, who were taken into custody from their quiet, suburban homes. The trial that followed captured the attention of the entire nation. It was a strange and often surreal spectacle. The defendants, old and frail, sometimes struggled to hear the proceedings, and the court had to take frequent breaks to accommodate their various health issues. The public was fascinated by this group of men from a bygone era of crime who had come out of retirement for one last, spectacular score. In the end, several of the key members, including Brian Reeder, John Collins, Terry Perkins, and Danny Jones, were found guilty and sentenced to prison. The confrontation was not a dramatic shootout, but the quiet, procedural work of the justice system. The legacy of the Hatton Garden heist is a peculiar one. It is remembered as a crime that was both audacious and, in some ways, slightly comical. It was a story that blended genuine criminal skill with moments of almost farcical incompetence. It became known as the final hurrah for a generation of old-school London criminals, men who had learned their trade in a world before CCTV and digital surveillance. They were analog thieves, ultimately caught by a digital world they did not fully understand, and like all great heist stories, a final, quiet mystery remains. The alarm specialist, a mysterious figure known to the gang only as Basil, was never identified or caught. He, along with a significant portion of the £200 million loot, simply vanished. The story of the Hatton Garden heist is a story about the passage of time. It is a tale of a quiet holiday weekend, a brazen and old-fashioned crime, and a thoroughly modern investigation that brought it to a close. It is a quiet testament to the idea that even the most experienced and audacious individuals can be undone by a world that has changed in ways they do not fully appreciate. But the sounds of that drill in the London basement have long since fallen silent. The old thieves have served their time. The story has settled from a sensational headline into a strange and quiet chapter of criminal history. Here, in the stillness of your room, the world is at peace. The quiet of your own space is secure, not by concrete walls or electronic alarms, but by the simple comfort of the present moment. The story is over. The case is closed. Let the strange tale of the diamond wheezes fade away into the night. All that is left now is the stillness and the soft invitation to sleep. Sleep now.